If you need to send image files to someone else for any reason, you'll want to use the export feature in Lightroom to ensure all of the adjustments you've applied in Lightroom will be retained. In this lesson, we'll take a look at the many options available to you when exporting images from Lightroom. I have a client who enjoyed some of my images from Japan and would like to use those images in a slideshow they'll present at an event. I've already filtered the images so the film strip only contains the images I need to send to this client. So first, I'll select all of these images so they can be exported. I can choose Edit, Select All from the menu, or simply press Ctrl-A on Windows or Command-A on the Macintosh in order to select all of the images on the film strip. Then I can choose File, Export from the menu, or press Ctrl-Shift-E on Windows or Command-Shift-E on the Macintosh. Of course, it's much easier to simply click the Export button at the bottom of the left panel in the Library module. When you click the Export button, the Export dialog will appear. The first decision we'll need to make is where we'd like the exported images to be saved. I find it most convenient to save those images on the desktop, but you can also choose a specific folder. You can specify that you want to choose the folder later, which is helpful when you're using a preset to export images, and you have some other options available as well. The last option is to save the folders in the same location as the original images, which can also be helpful in certain situations. But again, in this case, I'll just save them to the desktop so that they're readily available when I'm finished. I'll then turn on the Put in Subfolder checkbox if it's not turned on already, and type a name for the folder that I would like to have created on my desktop. For example, Export seems to make sense because then it's readily identifiable on my desktop. There's also a checkbox that allows me to add the images I'm exporting back into the current catalog. For example, in this case, my original images are raw captures, and I'll be generating JPEG images for the slideshow presentation. If I turned on this checkbox, those JPEGs would get added back into this catalog along with the original raw captures at the end of this process. I don't have any need to do that, so I'll leave this checkbox turned off. In the event that my export operation runs into any duplicate images, I can specify what I want Lightroom to do. The default is that Lightroom will ask you what to do, but you can also specify a specific task, for example, to overwrite the images without warning or to skip those files that already exist. I'll leave this set to Ask What to Do, so that I can make a decision at the time the issue comes up. In the file naming section, if you turn on the Rename To checkbox, we can adjust the settings and rename the images that are being exported. In this case, the existing file names aren't all that useful, so I'll go ahead and specify a new file naming structure. From the pop-up, I'll choose Edit to bring up the File Template Editor dialog. I'll then type some custom text for the file name. For example, I'll call this Tim Gray Kyoto, since these are images captured in Kyoto, Japan. I'll then add an underscore character, and then I'll also add a sequence number to the images, in this case a 2-digit sequence number. This file naming structure will be a little bit more useful, so I'll go ahead and click Done. We also have the option for when we want the sequence number to start, since I've added a sequence number to the file naming structure, as well as whether I want an uppercase or lowercase file extension for each image. Scrolling down, we come to the File Settings options. Here we can choose the file format. The options are JPEG, PSD, TIFF, DNG, or the original file format, which gives us the opportunity, by the way, to export our original raw captures. In this case, I need to use JPEG for the slideshow. Note that when we choose an option for the file format, the settings related to the files will change based on the options that are available for that particular file format. I'll increase the quality setting to its maximum value since these images will be displayed as part of a slideshow and won't need to be downloaded from the internet, so I'm not concerned about file size. I'll set the color space to sRGB, which can be helpful in ensuring the best colors in situations where the images are not being color managed. That's very likely in the case of a digital slideshow. If these images were for printing, I could of course choose Adobe RGB or even ProPhoto RGB if I were exporting 16-bit per channel images. If I had video files included and wanted to export those, I can turn on the Include Video Files checkbox. Keep in mind that all of these other attributes will not apply to video files. They'll simply be exported in their original file format. Scrolling down a little more, we see we have image sizing so that we can resize the images. In this case, I do want to resize, so I'll make sure the Resize to Fit checkbox is turned on. I know the customer will be using a digital projector that operates at a 1024 by 768 pixel resolution. So I'll set the option to Dimensions and then specify 1024 by 768. This will cause all of the images to be resized to fit within the boundaries of these dimensions. I'll leave the resolution set to 72 pixels per inch. It's actually not critical in this particular case, since I'm not going to be printing the images. For output sharpening, I'll certainly turn the option on and then specify screen rather than one of the options for printing the images. The amount I'll leave at standard. If the images were all low detail or high detail images, I might apply a lower or a higher amount of sharpening. But in this case, it's a mix of images, and so I'll leave it set to standard. For metadata, I don't want all of the details about the image to be included, so I'm going to leave the Minimize Embedded Metadata checkbox turned on. This will only include things like copyright information, not keywords and other metadata that I might not want to share with my clients. I can also turn on a watermark if I'd like to have the images marked as my own. I do want to get credit for the images in this case, so I'll leave the watermark checkbox turned on and choose the appropriate watermark that I've previously created from the pop-up. Next, I'll scroll down to the bottom of the page and we can see the post-processing section. Here we can determine what action should be taken after the export is complete. We can do nothing if we simply want to export the images and be done. We can show the images in our operating system. On Windows, this would be Explorer. On the Macintosh, this would be Finder. We can open the images in Photoshop or another application, or we can go to the Export Actions folder right now, which is a default folder available for exporting your images. In this case, I want the images to be shown to me just so that I'll know they were actually created successfully. At this point, I'm ready to export my images. But before I click Export, I'm going to create a new user preference so that I can save these settings for future use. To do so, I'll click the Add button on the left side of the Export dialog to bring up the New Preset dialog. I'll type a name. In this case, I might call it, for example, Slideshow 1024 by 768. I'll save this in the User Presets folder and then click Create. In the future, when I come to the Export dialog, to get all of these settings back, all I need to do is choose that preset that I've just created from the list at the left side of the Export dialog. Now I'll go ahead and click Export and all of the images will be processed. Lightroom will perform the tasks as needed based on the settings I used in the Export dialog. When the process is complete, it will open a window showing me all the images in the folder where they were created. Now that the task is completed, I can switch to the Explorer view to see the images that have just been created for me by the Export plugin. Once you've successfully exported your images with the desired settings, you're ready to send those files to the intended recipient. And next time you need to export images for a similar purpose, you can use a saved preset to make the task even faster. The export feature in Lightroom is very flexible, allowing you to export photos from Lightroom using a variety of file formats and settings. You can always extend this capability, however, through the use of export plugins. In this lesson, I'll show you one example of an export plugin, specifically one that allows you to export your images automatically to the SmugMug image sharing service. In this case, I've already selected the images that I want to upload to SmugMug, and so I'll simply choose the Export button on the left panel in the Library module. This will bring up the Export dialog. Now, I don't actually want to export to the hard drive, but at the moment, that's my only option. In order to add additional options, I'll need to work with the Plugin Manager. To get to the Plugin Manager, I'll simply click the Plugin Manager button at the bottom left of the Export dialog. This will bring up the Lightroom Plugin Manager dialog, where we can see all of the plugins that are currently installed. At the moment, I don't have the SmugMug plugin installed, so I'll need to download it. To do so, I'll go to the Plugin Exchange by clicking the button at the bottom left of the dialog. This will take me to the Adobe website, specifically to the Lightroom Exchange. I can then search for the specific plugin I'm looking for. And of course, if I didn't know what I was looking for yet, I could browse around on this website. As you can see, I have my search results here, and they include the Export to SmugMug plugin. I can simply download the plugin and then extract the files from the compressed archive. In this case, I've already done that, so I'll simply close my browser window. Once I've extracted the files that I downloaded, I can click the Add button. This will bring up the Browse dialog, so I can browse to the location where I've saved the extracted files and click OK. This will cause the plugin to be installed, so all I need to do at this point is click Done. Now, back in the Export dialog, I can choose from the Export To pop-up. And as you can see, now I have an option for SmugMug. I can then type my username and my password for my SmugMug account, and click the Login button to activate my account. I can then scroll through the various settings. For export location, I'll use temporary folder so that I'm not creating additional files. I'll simply upload the images to my SmugMug account and then discard the temporary files that were created for that process. I don't need to rename the files that I'm uploading, so I'll leave the Rename To checkbox turned off. For file settings, I'll use a JPEG file with a moderately high quality setting and the color space set to sRGB. I'll also resize the images so that the long edge is no more than 1000 pixels. I'll apply sharpening for the screen at the standard amount, and I'll minimize the embedded metadata. I'll also leave a watermark assigned to these images, in this case the one that includes my website address as well. In the SmugMug Tools section, I can update the details related to the gallery on SmugMug. I can choose a category for the images that I'm uploading. In this case, I'll scroll down and choose the Travel category since I'm uploading images from Paris. And then I'll call this gallery Paris, keeping it set as a public gallery. I can also add a caption, a specific password for this gallery, and a variety of other features that are available through SmugMug. I'll then scroll down so that I can see the Create button, which will create the actual gallery. Once this gallery is created, I can scroll down and adjust additional settings related to the gallery. In this case, I'll leave all the rest of the settings at their defaults and simply click the Export button. Lightroom will process these images, generating the final result that will be uploaded to my SmugMug account. Once that process is complete, I can navigate to my SmugMug page and see the new gallery. As you can see, once the process is finished, my browser will launch automatically and the new gallery in SmugMug will be displayed. There are a wide variety of export plugins available for Lightroom, and new ones are being created all the time. That means you'll have an ever-increasing way of sharing your images quickly and easily. The publish services in Lightroom are related to export plugins and provide a way to publish images in a variety of ways. In this lesson, we'll take a look at the Flickr publish service that is included with Lightroom. I've already chosen a collection that I'd like to publish to my Flickr account. So I'll click on, in this case, the last image, and then hold the Shift key and click on the first image in order to select all of the images I'd like to share. I'll then scroll down on the left panel in the Library module to the Publish Services pane. As you can see, there's an option for Flickr already installed with Lightroom. I'll click the Setup button to bring up the Lightroom Publishing Manager dialog. I can establish a variety of settings for the publishing of my images to Flickr. To get started, I'll click the Login button and then click Authorize to allow Lightroom to upload images to my Flickr account. I'll be redirected to the Flickr login page where I can type in my login information. I'll then click the Sign In button to log in to my Flickr account. I need to choose the option indicating I've arrived at this page because I specifically asked Lightroom to connect to my Flickr account, so I'll click Next to acknowledge that option. You can then review the details related to giving Lightroom access to your Flickr account, and if you're comfortable with it, click OK, I'll authorize it. Once that process is complete, you can simply close your browser. In this case, I'll just minimize the window since I'll be coming back to my Flickr account a little later. At this point, I can click Done, and I'm ready to get to work, preparing my images to publish on Flickr. I can choose what title I'd like to use for the images. I can choose an option from the pop-up. In this case, I'll use the IPTC title, which I actually haven't updated for these particular images. Fortunately, there's an option that deals with that. To the right, it says If Empty Use, File Name. I can also leave the option blank if I prefer, but I'd like to have the file name there at the very least. There's also an option that allows me to choose whether I want to replace existing titles or leave existing titles alone when I'm uploading photos. I'll then scroll down to see some of the additional options that are available. I can choose to rename my files if I'd like to by turning on the Rename To checkbox and establishing settings either by choosing a preset if I've saved one or choosing Edit to bring up the file name template editor. In this case, I don't need to rename my files, so I'll simply turn the checkbox off. When publishing to Flickr, the only option is to save the files as JPEG, so there's no option to change the file format. I can, however, change the quality or turn on a checkbox to limit the file size, which will automatically adjust the quality in order to achieve that file size. In this case, I'll leave the quality set at a value of around 80. Next, I'll scroll down, and as you can see, we have an option to resize the image here as well. I can turn on the checkbox and then specify the options for resizing. In this case, I'll resize the images so the long edge is no more than 1000 pixels. I'll also turn on the option not to enlarge, just in case I have any images that are smaller than that size. Optimizing the settings for the screen with a standard amount. I'm also going to minimize the amount of embedded metadata just because I don't want to share all of the details about my images. I'll include a watermark, choosing my saved watermark that includes my website address as the watermark option. Scrolling down, I can choose whether I want the images to be shared publicly or privately. If I choose the private option, I also have additional options for automatically sharing with my family or friends on Flickr. In this case, I want to share my images, so I'll simply choose the public option. I can also specify safety settings for Flickr, the options being safe, moderate, or restricted. In this case, I'll leave it set to the safe option, and there's no need for me to hide the images from public site areas. I can also specify the type, whether they're photos, screenshots, or other. Obviously, in this case, they're photos. Once I've finished establishing my settings, I can click the Save button. This establishes the settings but hasn't actually uploaded my images. To actually publish my images, I'll need to drag and drop them into my photo stream. So with my images selected, I'll click and drag, dropping them onto Photo Stream. As you can see, there are 10 images now in my photo stream, and Lightroom will process those images and post them to my Flickr account. At this point, the images are part of my photo stream, but they've not yet been uploaded to Flickr. To publish the images to Flickr, I'll simply right-click on my photo stream and choose Publish Now. Lightroom will then process all of my images and then upload them to my photo stream on Flickr. Once the process is complete, I'll go back to my web browser and navigate to my photos. As you can see, my images have been published by Lightroom directly to my Flickr account. But it gets even better. We can actually interact with our photos through Lightroom. For example, I'll go ahead and choose one of the images here and then post a comment to the photo. For example, I'll just type "great shot." I'll go ahead and post this comment, and it will be added to the page for this photo. I'll then switch back to Lightroom and choose my Flickr Publish service, specifically choosing the photo stream. I'll then scroll down to the bottom of the right panel in the Library module. Notice here we have the Comments pane. I'll click on the image that I posted a comment to and click the Refresh button. When I do so, Lightroom will retrieve the information about these images. Notice here that the comment has been posted directly from Flickr into Lightroom, so I can review the images in my photo stream to see what sort of comments have been added. I can even add comments from within Lightroom. In this case, I have multiple images selected, so first I'll select just a single image, getting back to the image that has a comment. And then I can post an additional comment. For example, I happen to know that that's canola in the background, so I'll type "love the canola." When I press enter, the comment will be posted in Lightroom and uploaded to my Flickr account. So when I switch back to my web browser and refresh this page, I'll be able to see the additional comment added for the image. As you can see, the Publish Services feature provides an excellent way to publish your images and interact with those who view your images through an online service.